Hello, thank you for checking into our ACANY and LIFEPlan virtual learning session for August 12, 2026. Today's topic is creating age-friendly spaces for participation and connection. In this informative and engaging presentation, Britney Goodrich, director of the Kennedy Willis Center on Down Syndrome at Pathfinder Village, shares practical strategies for creating supportive environments that help people stay connected, engaged, and involved as they age. In this video, Britney will share how to create safe, accessible, and welcoming spaces that support participation and independence, ways to adapt favorite activities so they remain meaningful and enjoyable as a person's needs change, simple, low-cost environmental modifications that can reduce confusion and promote confidence, strategies for encouraging social connection, engagement, and a sense of purpose for older adults and people experiencing cognitive changes. Whether you're a family member, caregiver, or support professional, you'll leave with simple ideas you can use right away to create supportive, age-friendly spaces. We hope you enjoy this presentation and find it helpful. Thank you for joining us. We are proud to introduce Britney Goodrich.
Hi, thank you, Kate. I appreciate it. So I'm going to screen share, and then if you could just let me know that you see everything okay. All right, how's that looking?
Looks
Okay.
beautiful.
Awesome. So today we are going to talk about creating age-friendly spaces for participation and connection. Kate had mentioned just a little bit of an introduction. Just to add, I really started my career about 13, 14 years ago, and started as a Willowbrook Medicaid Service Coordinator, ended up doing some work with the department largely, and then moved over and did some work with day services before coming over to the Kennedy Willis Center. A lot of my work is spent offering independent meeting facilitation and consultation for families and service providers. I am a Second Wind Dreams virtual dementia tour facilitator and an affiliated regional trainer with the National Task Group on Intellectual Disability and Dementia Practices. I always like to kind of start with this really beautiful aerial view of Pathfinder Village. If you have not been to visit, please do. It's a great time of year to come. And so the village itself has 300 acres and offers a variety of different services, including residential supports, adult day service programs. We have a K through 12 special education school, summer camp program, and post-secondary program for adults looking for a college-like experience. And so located at Pathfinder Village is the Kennedy Willis Center on Down Syndrome. We are a separate affiliate 501c3 and really are a resource center that works on providing best practice in the areas of education, research, program development for individuals, families, and the greater community. I always like to list some learning objectives. These are more for me, I think, and just keeping me on track of the things that I hope to share with you over this next time together. So for today's presentation, we're going to describe meaningful activity engagement across the lifespan. We're going to look at identifying some strategies to enhance your existing places and spaces. And then we're going to review some ways to modify and scale activities as able. So meaningful engagement really are all of those really wonderful activities, relationships, and experiences that promote these really good feelings of purpose, a sense of belonging, choice, and accomplishment. For all of us, these areas of interest and experiences may change or evolve over time. So sometimes we may just have things that we've always loved, even just since our childhood, that carries on with us through adulthood. But sometimes maybe just the intensity or the frequency of our level of participation may change. And we know that meaningful engagement is really not just about finding a way to pass the time for ourselves or for the people that we support, but it's also really trying to find opportunities to connect and really just in general enhance our quality of life when we're doing things that make us happy and make us feel purposeful and meaningful. We're going to all feel better and improve that quality of life. I wanted to just kind of look at some of the valued roles before we get into more about meaningful activity. And as we consider what makes activities meaningful, it's really important to recognize that engagement is rooted in the roles that shape a person's identity. So when we think about that, it's more about who a person is rather than just what we're doing. And so I've listed here some bulleted different valued roles. And for some of us, we may align and share some of these. For others, they may look a little different. But these are really who we are, who we may describe ourselves as, and the things that are really important to us in our lives. We may talk about our work, our employment, maybe our work that we do as a volunteer for a community organization. We may recognize ourselves as a really close friend or a best friend to someone, and also our role within our family circle. Who are we in that space? Are we, daughters, sisters, cousins, aunts, uncles? We may also describe ourselves in this valued role as advocates and speaking up for things that are important to us. And then also sometimes people will describe and use valued roles and give us a little hint of what's important to them in terms of, I've listed here, a musician. They may be an athlete, a pet owner, and I even put a lifelong learner. And that doesn't necessarily mean somebody enrolled in formalized education. That might just be somebody that enjoys learning new things and taking up new hobbies. And so meaningful engagement really is at its strongest when activities support a person's valued role. So any of these that would be listed for a person, not just their level of participation. So somebody could be an athlete and only have ever run one marathon, but they're still saying they're an athlete and that's important to them and valuable to them, and something that we should absolutely support. We know that meaningful engagement has many benefits that go beyond just simply keeping somebody preoccupied or keeping ourselves busy or kind of passing the time. When people participate in activities that are meaningful to them, we do see a really great boost in well-being. We see improvements in self-esteem, increased feelings of accomplishment, right? When we're doing something we enjoy, especially if we get really comfortable with it, it makes us feel good and feel really proud of what we're doing. Absolutely encourages social interaction with each other or the people that you're participating in this activity with. Meaningful engagement also really is good for our brains. And so by keeping our brains active, we're kind of flexing our memory, recall, our problem solving, and even those creativity muscles. So just as we're working out maybe our bodies in physical activity, we can be working out our brains with some of this different type of engagement. And when we're active during the day, participating in some different activities, we really can try to reduce some feelings of restlessness, maybe anxiety, which can promote improved sleep. So I wanted to look a little bit about adapting activities and some of the benefits that they have both for the person and then also the caregiver. So when activities are adapted to the person, we do see a heightened sense of purpose and accomplishment. We just mentioned that on the last slide. And we know that it's also really important to offer age-appropriate activities. And this is especially true as we think about people getting older, just to make sure that we're still preserving that level of dignity and respect for that person, can still enjoy the things that they want to, but making sure it's age-appropriate. And we know that when activities are familiar, when they're predictable, and when they're achievable, so they're not too far out of reach, the person is more likely to engage in them and also have confidence rather than these feelings of anxiety or even feelings of confusion and not knowing what to do. And so therefore we see a nice reduction most of the time in frustration and feelings of failure, right? Because when we know what we're supposed to be doing, we're more likely to participate and feel good about that. And so I've listed here that I think, really important and hopefully something we would all agree on is that success really in this respect of this presentation is measured by engagement and enjoyment and just the happiness of the person participating, not necessarily by these perfect outcomes or reaching some specific goal in mind. And so this really allows us all to take a deep breath and be flexible when we're working with people, especially as people who are getting older, maybe experiencing further cognitive decline or even dementia. It's no longer about getting something right. It's more about just being present and enjoying that moment. So looking at some of the benefits to the caregiver, when we talked a little bit already last slide, when expectations are realistic and when we are able to adapt activities to meet the person's needs where they are, really already minimizes conflict or resistance and feelings of the caregiver. That could be ourselves, that could be natural supports and family members or friends, caregivers, it could also be paid supports. And so those feelings kind of go away. And isn't that what we want? When I think about just engaging in an activity with somebody, we just really want someone to have a good time. And that includes ourselves too as a caregiver. And so when we're doing that and not looking at ways to focus on maybe correcting a mistake or worried about getting something right, we can instead just enjoy the relationship and enjoy the communication that we have together. And I think likewise that then builds trust between the person and the caregiver in whatever relationship that is. We also know that for caregivers, this approach can really reduce some stress, some even emotional fatigue. Sometimes, the days are long and things are hard, and we've got a lot of responsibility. And so we really think that being able to modify and adapt these activities, the expectations for us also decrease, and also the likelihood of feeling burned out and over it really go down as well. And so we shift from this feeling of having to manage maybe potential problems or things that are coming up, and instead just creating an experience. And I really love to do that. Sometimes when I think about the activity, or maybe I'm visiting someone at a program or at their home, it's not always about what they're doing, and we can talk about that, but it's really more about the relationship and the communication. Asking them about what they're working on, tell me about what you're doing, and just seeing if they're enjoying it. So I put this little kind of image here to kind of give us a hint of what we're going to look at over the next couple of slides, but really trying to set the stage for success when we look at meaningful engagement and activity. We're going to talk about the role of the activity itself. We're going to talk about the role of the caregiver, and then we're going to talk about the role of the environment. So when we think about the role of the activity, we obviously want to make sure that whatever activity that we're presenting or offering to the person, that it's meaningful and has a connection to the person. And I feel like you're probably saying, Brittany, you've already said this several times. I have. And this is really a little bit of a no-brainer, but is still important, especially if we're working with somebody maybe we don't know as well. Maybe if you're listening and you're a paid staff member or a service provider, you're getting to know someone, it's really important to get to know the things that are important to them, what interests them, their current hobbies, so we can offer them things that they enjoy. We do hope that the activity itself is familiar and based on some past experiences. And this doesn't mean that we never try anything new. I'm definitely not saying that. But I do think if you're noticing some level of disinterest, or maybe people declining to participate, or only coming for a little bit at the table and then leaving, it may just clue you in to think, maybe we should try something else. Let's go back to what we know and what's familiar to the person. And I think about an example, so maybe somebody always loved horses. Maybe they rode and did horseback riding for most of their life, but they're older. Maybe they've had some health changes, and that's not something that they want to or want to do anymore. But that doesn't mean that we can completely eliminate and get rid of that enjoyment that person has. Can we visit a stable? Can we go to a farm? Can we connect and have that person volunteer? Is there a craft that can connect to it? Do we make sure that we're going to all the fairs where we can watch, or the rodeos to see the barrel racing or other things that may interest the person? And so that familiarity piece and past experiences really can be stretched and scaled as the person's needs change. When we look at kind of the role of the caregiver, I think it's such a tremendous honor to work with people, and you think about the ability that you have as a caregiver to really transform this activity into something really positive. And so, kind of taking a look back at how we're presenting the activity, how are we participating ourselves, really plays a huge role in the overall experience. And so I've listed again a couple of things just for some considerations of ourselves as caregivers, making sure we're adapting those expectations to the person's abilities, making sure we're providing encouragement and reassurance. We talked already before, it's not about getting something right. It's maybe just that we're participating and that we're present. Focusing on strengths and the things that the person can do and all of their abilities. And offering the right amount of support is always something I notice a little bit more sometimes with paid caregivers, is that we like to do a lot for the person. And so maybe this person can do a component of the activity, but we're doing it for them. And so I would encourage you to really think about allowing the person to do as much as they can for themselves before stepping in. We're always going to make sure that we're promoting choice and independence. And so maybe it's offering a little bit of a variety of an activity. If you're doing maybe a certain craft, but maybe you're offering some different choices, is going to increase the likelihood of that person joining in with you. And we're going to talk next on the next slide about creating a failure-free experience and kind of what that means. And really, when we think about people aging, people maybe experiencing some health changes, they may not want to or be able to participate in activities in the same level that they once did or as often as they once did. And so, how do we address this? And it kind of goes back to making sure that we're not just saying, oh, the person can't do that anymore, and so we just drop it. Instead, looking at how can we modify and scale and adapt it. And so, really looking at failure-free activities is a great way to be able to modify or adapt these activities versus just eliminating them. One of the things that we can look at is encouraging repetition and routine. And so maybe it's a task that requires, the same kind of motions, the same kind of couple of steps over and over. And this can be confidence building, actually, in a sense, especially for older adults. These are tasks that they can still perform. They're routine in nature. We know what to expect. We also want to try to simplify instructions and the available materials that are out, even on the table. So if you're doing a task at a big table and there's a ton of stuff on there that may be overwhelming, maybe break those tasks down a little bit. Maybe we're only bringing out the items that we need in that moment. Maybe it's a cooking activity and we're just doing the first couple of ingredients instead of putting everything out on the table that can feel overstimulating or overwhelming. We're going to try to ignore mistakes or inaccuracies that are happening across the activity and really just, which is hard. I think depending also on your personality can be a little hard, or if there's something that you really want to try to do correctly, it can be hard, but everything's going to be okay, and trying to look past those. And again, just really motivating and encouraging that person just for being there and for helping is great. We do want to try to reduce demands and expectations. Again, it kind of goes with the last bullet above. And we also look at roles no longer really being important. This is very true for adults that are experiencing dementia. I think about a lot of activities that maybe we enjoy that do come with a lot of rules, board games, card games, even almost societal rules that we have. May no longer apply, or maybe something that we want to look past. And again, we're just finding ways to modify that activity and just have a good time. So we're in the third kind of pie piece here of activity, caregiver, and now the environment. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the pieces and the components that make up a good environment for meaningful engagement. And we know that we want our environment, and that's really just the space and the place wherever we are participating in, where we're existing in that moment when we're doing an activity. And so we want to make sure that the environment is promoting, first and foremost, physical safety. We're picking a place that's safe, the person's okay, but also offers secure wayfinding, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We want the environment to really encourage social participation. We want the person to feel comfortable, to feel welcomed and included. And we want to see if the environment can reinforce some predictability and routine. That could be visuals that we see. We're looking at calendars of what's coming up next. It may just be that there's predictability in the way things are set up. They're clear, they're open. We know where we need to be, where we need to go. We're not constantly changing an activity from one room to the next room. And so that provides a lot of comfort for a person to know, okay, I know that about this time in the morning, I'm going to come to the table and we're going to work on this. We also hope that the environment is going to support some emotional well-being, and we can talk a little bit more about that too. But I added here at the bottom, really the environment is super important in the level of participation, and it can, when you have a really good supportive environment, it does have the power to enhance or even hinder participation. And so we'll look at some maybe good environments and maybe some not so good environments. And see how that may change a person's level of comfortability and of interest. So when an activity isn't successful, sometimes I think about that sometimes, and when we do visits and we talk to staff or maybe even caregivers, and we talk a lot about sometimes the challenges and things that may not be going well. Sometimes in that traditional sense, we just assume that then the person isn't interested. So, and that might be true a little bit, but sometimes it makes me just kind of question and want to ask a few more things. And so what if we looked at this a little bit differently? So if we have someone that maybe is showing a little bit of a disinterest, not really sure why, they've always loved to do this. I kind of want to take us through these questions so we can take a step back and really look at the whole picture and see if maybe there isn't something else going on. And so I had listed here, I'm just checking my notes. I had listed just, in an extreme example, which, may apply to some of you, may not. But if I think about myself and participating in a reading activity or working on a Sudoku puzzle or something, I'm not going to be successful if I'm doing that in a casino or an arcade, right? Those are pretty stimulating, overstimulating environments. Now, some of you may have the ability to kind of black out some of the other things that are going on around you, but for a lot of us, and I do think for the people that we support, that might be a challenge. And so when I think about those spaces, I'm trying to focus and do an activity that's quiet, that's relaxing to me. I'm not going to want to do that at a casino or an arcade. That's just too loud, too bright, and then in some areas too dark. Maybe has different smells going on, too many people, right? So I know that's an example, and I don't think anyone of us are doing our book club in an arcade. But I do think you can look at that example and think about the environment and how do we pair it to work well with the activity that we're offering. And so that first question is, what is the activity being offered? And is it something that is meaningful to the person? Again, I've said it a couple of times, and you're thinking, we've talked about this, but it is important. For me, someone offering me maybe a task to do some math worksheets is not my favorite thing to do, and I'm going to show some disinterest in that. I'm probably going to get up from the table and not want to help complete that task. But if you show me a magazine or a book, or we do something outside in the garden, you've got me. And so sometimes it's just as simple as, are we pairing those interests with the activity that we're offering the person? The other question to kind of think about when we look at creating this correct or this right environment is, when is the activity being offered? Are you doing something in the morning? Is this a task that's being offered in the afternoon? Is it after lunch when everybody feels kind of tired right after lunch and you kind of you're ready for that nap? Is it around medications when you're giving those and maybe the person feels fatigued or just doesn't feel well at that time? The third question to think about is where is it taking place? So what room are we doing this activity in? Are we inside? Are we outside? Is the environment otherwise comfortable for the person? Is it accessible for the person? Is there limited distractions? And I know that that's easier said than done sometimes, but it is something to at least ask yourself and see how things are kind of lining up. So I've listed this kind of this graphic, and if anyone had attended our recent webinar series, it was the Winter of 2026 webinar series, we talked a lot about indoor and outdoor environments, and we went through all of these components that kind of make up a supportive environment. We don't have time today to go through all of these, but I am going to try to touch on the first three: accessibility, orientation, and safety. And so we'll go through some of these things and maybe some areas and ways that we can modify existing spaces. So in general, kind of just put some definitions to each of these components. So we know that accessible features are ones that remove any physical or cognitive barriers that otherwise limit engagement and participation. The benefits to having accessible environments include environments that support things like our mobility and getting around and ambulating safely, and other physical safety. Accessible environments also improve our overall comfort and usability of the space. And it also promotes greater independence and choice making. When we can get around, when we can navigate, we're able to make more decisions, more choices about where we're going. I've listed these photos. These are some mishaps, right? And so hopefully you can see them okay and clearly, but these are maybe some not ideal spaces. And these are, real places. And so we see kind of the two pictures on the outside, otherwise demonstrating what we could call a visual cliffing, right? And so what's very hard to tell is that both the picture of the person with the shoes and the picture to my right, with the black carpeting with the railing, are stairs. And so we may be able to queue up enough to see that those handrails are showing that there's stairs, but otherwise it kind of looks like a ramp. It also kind of looks like a really messed up staircase or something. If you look really closely, things kind of pop in and out at you and can be very disorienting. The person for the shoes, again, hard to see, and you probably cannot see my mouse, but there is a dark kind of vertical line a little bit up from his shoes, and that's actually the drop down to a step. And so these are scary spaces. These are spaces that, otherwise are not very accessible, may cause a person to not want to walk, right, out of fear or just anxiety. They may not move, or they may not engage in that space because it's just too overwhelming. I switched and put this photo in just this morning because I was kind of thinking about activities and engagement. And I look at this closet and I think, well, it's very organized. And this is nice, and it looks to be, just somebody took a lot of time doing this. But what I still see here is that it is otherwise pretty inaccessible. You can see inside a little bit. Things are way too high. There's too many choices, too many things. Being able to reach them would be difficult. Getting them out are difficult for all people with different abilities. And so I'm going to show you, I think on the next slide is maybe a more preferred option. So really just simplifying, really just looking at things. And so we go from that closet, which you still may need that closet to store all those great activities and art supplies that you have, but maybe at the table, we're just bringing out this smaller caddy with whatever the choice of medium that you're using is just available to the person. I love the picture in the middle with these adaptive tables. We use a lot of those here. Being able to meet the just comfortability and the height requirements for people that are different heights, that may be sitting in a wheelchair versus a different chair. And so again, sometimes just making sure that it is just practically the table that the person is working on, the chair that they're sitting in, meeting their needs. We've listed a couple other photos, again, just ways to make spaces accessible. These are not things that cost a lot of money. There you can see the modification made to the doorknob, so we don't have to completely take off that. We're just adding something that's a little bit more adaptable and grippable for a person. And then, of course, there's just a simple picture here with a sofa and a carpet, just showing you, the plain carpeting is going to be so much easier to see. You're able to see the contrast to the sofa and where it is that you're supposed to be sitting and any obstructions that may be in the way. Moving into kind of that second piece of these components of supportive environments is orientation. And so orientation and those design elements really help a person acclimate and interpret the spaces with much greater ease and confidence. And so it's kind of figuring out where you need to go. And so the benefits of good orientation is that we're reducing confusion and anxiety, which is really important for older adults, really important for older adults with cognitive decline or dementia. We really want to try to make the spaces make sense. We want to provide reassurance and to navigate that space. Again, this is really great for older adults that are experiencing some memory or spatial awareness or other different types of problem-solving challenges. And some of the best recommendations is when you're looking at some of your spaces is really to use simple, clear signage or different markers that are a means of a wayfinding cue. And so wayfinding is really just about helping the person know where they are, know where they need to go, and how to get there. And so when we're using these clear, simple signs, they are quite literally clear, easily visible, and may have some color contrasting to them, so some brighter colors that play off of each other. We're going to try to use recognized symbols that are identifiable. We want to try to use these symbols that also have text and a picture included. This is really just going to help. Maybe a person was able to read earlier on and they've lost that skill. But again, that dignity piece is really important. Let's put a picture of what it is that we're talking about and just leave the text below. We want to try to identify the really important destinations. We do not want to have a gazillion signs all over your space. You really are just trying to cue a person up to those important places: the bedroom, the bathroom, the kitchen. For you, it may be something else in your house, but those are definitely some of the more important spaces in a traditional home. And when we think about line of sight orientation, these are putting those visual prompts in a place where they need to go. We don't want to put a picture, a sign, we'll see a sign for the bathroom, maybe on the hallway. We really want to put it on the door to the bathroom, right? We want to try to be as clear as we can, so that person no longer has to rely on memory. Hey, where was that room? I remember, but I can't quite find it right now. And we don't want to have to give some complex instructions. I know sometimes larger homes, program spaces. The bathroom may not be in the room. And so to tell someone, hey, Brittany, the bathroom is outside, to the left, down the hall, up the stairs, is a complicated directive that maybe we don't want to give to the person. So here's some orientation and action, some better examples of maybe where we can use this. And again, just to remind everybody, these are things that are really affordable. I wanted to come and talk to you today about practical strategies that you could implement, not something that you had to have a construction crew come in and update your house. These are things that are downloadable online. You could create your own and really modify to meet the needs of the people that you're supporting. First and foremost, at least my top left, is just a picture of the plate, a dinner plate, and it's just color contrasting. I actually love the kind of flower design. I've not seen that before. But you can see easily that meal and the food on the plate is popping right out, so we know what's expected there. The napkin is a different color, as well as the silverware. In the middle, that was one of those color contrasting signs that we talked about. So we've got the image as well as what it is with text underneath. Very similar next to it is just a bedroom picture. We can put the person's name, but if they've lost the ability to be able to read perhaps or recognize that printed text, let's put a picture. And so that can orient the person to their bedroom. Many of our homes, I would say a lot of our homes, the majority, every door is the same. And so unless you really know where you're going, every door may just be a white door, a wooden door, and it's very hard to discern where it is that you're supposed to go. Down at the bottom, we've listed, we do tend to see a lot of challenges with orientation and getting lost and confused in the bathroom. And that is because bathrooms are typically always all white. And so you can't really see. There's no color contrasting available. Most of our sinks, our toilets, our tubs and showers are white. And so we've put some different examples here of a color contrasting hand towel, as well as a toilet seat, which is very easy to get. They're on Amazon, they're on many different sites, and you can switch that out. And again, just helping to reorient the person where it is that they need to go. And then in the bottom corner, we've put some easy signs on dresser drawers, again with a picture and with the text, and these can be used as little or as much as needed. So the third component and the last component that we're going to at least cover for today's purpose is really safety. And these are those features that are important in a protective sense to minimize risk, but also to enable as caregivers for us a peace of mind for the loved ones that we're working with. And so some real basic considerations to think about is where you can try to limit clutter, limit the amount of stuff that you have, especially on the floor, on tabletops. We want to try to work to provide really good and adequate lighting, and even in the daytime. So sometimes you'll think, oh, we've got enough, the curtain's open and things are okay. I'm going to show you a picture on the next slide where just simply turning the lights on makes such a difference. We want to try to set up a designated space for the activity again. So we're trying to make sense for where it is that we're going in the activity and where we're doing it. Make the space easy to get to, and also have furniture that's easy to get in and out of. I've put down in red just some other unhelpful, maybe safety concerns that tend to be implemented in a home for a good reason, but tend to sometimes work in an opposite way. So things like loud bells, flashing lights, public staff announcements, and we see these a little bit more in provider spaces, not necessarily in our homes. But sometimes that can end up being more stressful, more overstimulating, and cause that person to get more anxious and actually move about more. So we put some pictures in here. I like the kind of before and after photo. Same space. I was really looking, I'm like, wow, that doesn't even actually look like the same space. And so you can see it's just it looks like a comfortable home, right? This is kind of what my home looks like. I have stuff a lot of places. But you can see the difference in the after. The light was turned on, and what a difference did it make by clearing some of these items off of the floor. There was a rug that was underneath one of the desks or dressers there to the side. It is just nothing else but a fall hazard, with some other items on the ground, the laundry baskets on the ground. But you can see so much better and after, just it's able to be moved around. People can access that much, much easier and safer. We have a picture here of a door, and so sometimes what at least we get a lot of calls for request for is when people are wandering or sometimes demonstrating an elopement risk as it relates to a dementia diagnosis. And so sometimes what we can do is be creative and disguise a doorway into something else. And so in this case, it's a bookshelf. And so, you can still see the handle, but otherwise it kind of looks like a bookshelf and we can't walk through a bookshelf. And so that may deter the person away from that door that you're not wanting them to go through. There are other choices online, but these are removable and they're really affordable and great strategies to use if need be. Some people have used curtains. There's definitely some different options out there. This type of attachment or almost like a wallpaper that you can put on the door could be used on things like basement, or cellar stairs if we're, worried about that, or even, access to an attic or something. Even closets that sometimes have maybe chemicals or different things in there for your household, but you may not want a person to have access to, are great to use here. And then in the top corner, I just picked one, not endorsing this one specifically, just picked one that this device can be installed over doorways or over windows. And what I like about it is that it's got a little bit of a pager that we can hook on our pants or our belt loop as the caregiver, and it can just vibrate or chime just to us. Sometimes we see, again, in larger group homes, maybe these very audible, loud, jarring doorbells and door alarms. Sometimes can just have the opposite effect and also can disrupt other people in the home too. All right, so we're going to kind of look at modifying and scaling some supports for activities. And I've listed these. These are things that you're all doing already, but I just love to kind of look and think about the different buckets. Sometimes it's like, man, what are we going to do today? I'm running out of some ideas. There are so many wonderful engagement ideas that both the person you're supporting and yourself can enjoy. So I've listed a bunch of different social and community-oriented activities, creative activities, cognitive activities, right? We talked about the role of using our brains in still modifying that as able, but still thinking about things, and then moving our bodies. So many different wonderful physical activities that are available to us. I've listed again some sensory activities and also just these reminiscent ones. These might be my favorite, especially helpful for a person who's further along, maybe in age or further along in a dementia diagnosis. Really trying to just enjoy looking at photo albums, talking about different past times, or just revisiting meaningful moments to them can really be a great opportunity to connect. So this is really the last part of SK. I'm looking at the time, we're doing okay. And we're gonna just scale these activities. And really the reason why we're scaling activities is to try to find a way to modify either the difficulty level, the duration, or the intensity of whatever activity that we're offering. And so when do we do this? We would want to scale an activity when we're noticing a minor change in a person's ability. We talked about that before. Maybe they're a little bit more withdrawn. Maybe they're not staying engaged as long as they used to. And then we also talked about why maintaining independence, we want to still make sure that we're promoting physical and mental health, as well as reducing their frustration to continue to kind of encourage or overly encourage them to participate when they don't want to. So here's a wonderful activity, super simple activity, right? So many of us color. This is something that's easily scalable. And so this is just a quick snapshot of someone who doesn't need any change. We don't need to adapt this activity at all. We've got a huge coloring book, tons of different pages in there, and a 20 count marker set. And so this is available to them to use as they would like. We kind of go down and scale at the first level. We're maybe looking at maybe some mild cognitive changes, and you can see here there's just a fewer amount of options available. We've cut out a few different pages. They still have a choice and could pick which one is their favorite. And then we've switched and used a little bit larger marker with fewer choices that are easier for manipulation. Here we move down and scale it a little bit further, and we're looking at moderate cognitive changes, and we see that there's now just one picture, and then we've offered different markers based on the color choices either they've set or things that they love. A lot of times it's pretty clear to know what a person's favorite color. We're going to pick those out and offer that to them. And then scaling it one more time, we're looking at some severe cognitive changes. And this, again, does not mean that this person who always loved to color has to stop coloring or enjoy doing this art together. So we're providing materials based on the knowledge of the person, and we're offering different modalities. So maybe the markers are just a little bit hard to hold. We still have them there, but maybe we've switched to some different sponges or paints. We could finger paint on this. Again, still making it accessible to them. While we're doing this too, again, it may require some physical assistance or hand over hand to help the person if they still want to do it. And while we're doing it, having a conversation about it. Maybe you've got your cat in the home. Maybe they've always loved pets in this example. And so you can talk about that, share a story about that. We're going to scale one more activity just to see just in a different kind of capacity. And this is a household activity. And so we've asked someone to, set the table for dinner, something that we would all do in our homes. And so at baseline, we're just asking the person to please help us set the table for dinner. We're not making any changes here. We're going to scale it once back for maybe some mild cognitive changes, and we're setting out in advance what it is that we need to set the table with. We're not doing it for them, but maybe we've gotten them out of the cupboard for them and out of the drawers for them. If we move it back one more to someone facing maybe moderate changes, we're going to lower expectations a little bit more. We're going to set out just individual items, and we may use a visual prompt so you can see on the screen just a kind of a placemat of maybe something that they could follow and copy from. We go back one more. Again, still does not mean that the person is not able to help. Mealtime in general is such a great engaging activity for everybody, but we're going to lower expectations a little bit more and just work on maybe one single task. In this case, it was a cup. Maybe it's just the napkin. And you are maybe having to provide some physical assistance if they want that help. And either way, celebrating the success that they're helping, they're participating, and that you appreciate their time. So in summary, I really just appreciate everyone listening to this, talking about creating spaces that really matter. I hope what you've taken away from this presentation is that age-friendly spaces really do not have to be complicated or expensive. You can really keep it simple, focus on the person first, and utilize the resources that you already have. And just know that some of the most impactful spaces are the ones that are just simple and just centered on the person's needs. And so you guys are already doing all of that. You can add a few things maybe that you've learned today in this presentation. Please stay connected with us in the Kennedy Willis Center. We have a lot of really wonderful age-friendly, inclusive environments for both indoor and outdoor spaces. You are welcome to visit at any time. And we're also here to help answer any questions that you may have. I'll list really quickly just some of the other available services. You can see these on the slide, but please call us if you need anything. We have a biannual newsletter. We offer some baseline screening assessments for dementia and offer a lot of different webinars and resources for caregivers. We also offer something called the Virtual Dementia Tour, and that's a training that's available. And if you'd like more information, please just let me know.